Wuthering Heights. Yes, that's right, folks. It's Valentine's Day. Big time for romance, so why not go out there and watch one of the biggest romance stories ever told, adapted for the umpteenth time. Emily Bronte's story. This time coming to you from Emerald Fennell. Are you a fan? Are you? I'm genuinely asking. I'm sure you're probably a fan of like Bronte's work, but are you a fan of Emerald Fennell? This is her third theatrical film, yet Promising Young Woman. A movie I think is fine. It's probably her best work in my opinion, and is just okay. Then you had Saltburn, which holds up poorly. And all that leads us to her biggest and most bombastic film yet, a modern adaptation of Wuthering Heights. And if you haven't seen anything else on this channel, the video that came out before this one is my big Valentine's Day special on a number of Wuthering Heights adaptations from the 30s and 50s and 70s and 90s and even the modern stuff. So I am getting more versed in this world than I have been at any point in my life. I have not read the actual book. I wanted to read that before I went into this, just because I knew who Fennell was as a filmmaker and the kind of stuff she plays with, which feels very antithetical to what that book actually is. Which is okay, I guess. Adaptations are allowed to change themselves and try something new. I have no problem with you taking a source material and doing your own spin on it. Like, I'm not mad about Emerald making this movie. That's not the problem with this movie. Or maybe it is. Maybe the fact that she wants to make it is the problem with it. I don't know. What I do know is that every time we talk about an Emerald Fennell movie, I feel like I'm left talking a lot about stuff more than I am about other movies. And that's not always the best thing, but sometimes it is good because this is content. I have to talk about this stuff. And it's, I guess, helpful to know that there's stuff to talk about in a movie. Because we just as easily sit here and talk about movies where there's nothing to explore, no deeper themes or anything. Not that there's like real deep themes in this movie, but there are choices made that leave itself for discussion and interpretation, which is kind of what the book does too, but in different ways. Full disclosure on this adaptation of Wuthering Heights. I did not like this movie. I have yet to really like an Emerald Fennell movie. I don't know what it is. Part of me thinks she's a lot like the female equivalent of Zack Snyder. And what I mean by that is Snyder is so good at making a movie look beautiful. He understands what he's doing behind the camera, what he wants his actors to do, where they're standing, get you really cinematic shots that look like they're straight from a music video or a video game. Emerald Fennell's the same way for like schmaltzy, over-the-top, dramatic, romantic stuff like that. Snyder's like machismo stuff, feminine stuff goes to Fennell in the same aspect. But give them a script. And it's not great. Give them some actors. They don't know how to make actors work. And you're left with something that looks like it's a brilliant piece of filmmaking if you didn't have any sound coming from it or hear anybody talking or looking at them long enough. This movie is really weird. And I don't know if that's the problem with it. I think the problem is like the stuff that Fennell wants to actually adapt from this story is kind of what makes it the problem. Now I get it. This is a centuries old book. There's different interpretations. You can tell what you want from it. And I'm trying to figure out like what it is that she actually gets from this book that she wants to explore. Having just seen 5 other adaptations this week, it's very strange to see the things that she omits, the things that she changes, and how hard she develops into the love story. I was very surprised by how this really wants you to feel the romance of these two characters, almost to the detriment of the piece, because that's not what this book is about. This is a book about two people who scorn each other so badly that they seek revenge later on in their life and ruin 2 generations of families. But this movie doesn't talk about the second generation, nor does it want to show you any conflict from within the Catherine and Heathcliff dynamic. These are two people who are in love. The movie makes the choice to say these two characters love each other and want to be with each other. And the movie allows it. The movie gives them the leeway to pursue that dynamic, almost to the point where there's no actual conflict between it. There's real no tension for Heathcliff growing up. There are some loud voices, but he still has this thing that kind of just goes easily for him. It really beats around the bush in a lot of stuff, which really sucks because it omits specific characters that would give you some external conflict for Heathcliff to face growing up in this world. The other strange thing about this piece, and I don't know what the choice is for that, but you have people like Shazad Latif, who plays Edgar in this piece. He is not a white man. You also have Hong Chow in this. She's not a white woman. This is a story that is primarily talked about through like white people of a certain era, you know? So doing like the colorblind casting changes the dynamic completely. And it's very strange that the piece doesn't do it for Heathcliff, where you think that's where the struggle comes from. Like, you could even have it be an interesting piece for Catherine and her own prejudice if Heathcliff was a person of color and she married a different person of color. But the film doesn't have you do that. It almost feels weirder for Catherine to make Edgar out to be the bad guy in this romance, which he's actually in love with Heathcliff, if Edgar is the guy of color in the story. So I try to parse like what it is Fennell is taking from this story that made her want to tell it, because I can't really figure it out. I think it's a very high schooler's interpretation of like yearning on screen. Just this idea of like saying the big fancy words and this guy's going to lose his mind for you. It doesn't feel like she has anything of note to say from this story. And it's more trying to take the trope of this long lost love that was forgotten to time and give you shock value to it. She likes to have those big flashy moments where it's almost like she's behind the camera going, am I getting away with this? Is this too raunchy and naughty for you? But it never is. Because as much as this is like a raunchy and steamy version, it doesn't get to the places I think it wants to. And I think that's just maybe my expectations for that stuff compared to a normal person. A thing I was thinking about a lot when I was watching this movie is Heated Rivalry, that huge hockey show that's been blowing up and people are talking about endlessly. Or even something like 50 Shades of Grey, where it's like, this is so dark and raunchy, and it's like, ooh, it's so sexy and showing you something you haven't seen before, but it's pretty tame. And maybe it's just how I was raised, the stuff I grew up watching and understanding, or how I see the act of romance in general that makes me go, is this really steamy? Is this really like boundary pushing? Now, maybe for like a Bronte adaptation, it is. Where it's like, oh man, we see actual visceral movements of like masturbation and people doing sex acts and everything like that. Heathcliff's going down on her, you know? It's like, that's like, I think those specific shots would be intense if you are Catherine. And the way Catherine is portrayed in this movie is that she's never had a sexual experience in her life and doesn't know these feelings. Like, if you are a normal person who grows up knowing what, like, love is, or having any form of sexual connection to the world, or understanding romance, this isn't spicy. It's more just shock value stuff of, like, yeah, we're going deep in here, man. I'm going to give you visuals of, like, sitting on eggs and, like, sticking your finger in Jell-O and smearing some bread everywhere. Ooh, look how dark and sexy this is. But it's just shock value and doesn't really give you, like, a sense of the romance for it. There's not, like, the incredible, intense yearning and pining in these relationships. There's not, like, a scene where Elordi's given, like, a Laurence Olivier level performance of, like, how much he loves Catherine and it hurts him. It's just more like the modern spicy books that people read, if like that's the thing. And I'm like, do we really want the Heated Rivalry version of Wuthering Heights? Is that what people want these days? The production design and costuming and set decorating, they're really good in this movie. Like, it's real interesting scenery and choices being made. Like, the costumes look insane. It doesn't feel like it's real, which I think is also a problem that this faces, where it feels like it's the most popular actors of today just doing stupid stuff. It feels like a commercial. It feels like a music video. When they do the needle drops and the montages within the needle drops, it does not feel like a real movie, and just more like I'm watching something that's just on my phone. And I think that's awful, especially considering this movie is shot in VistaVision. And I'm just like, really? You have some of the best cameras available to you today, and the only interesting thing you're doing with them is trying to tease me into thinking that this is like high art or like sexy. It's not doing either of those. Not that Fennel wants to do those. I generally don't think as a filmmaker she wants to consider this high art. I think she wants it to be like in your face, look at how cool and fucked up it is, but in like a steamy way where you're supposed to get turned on by it, in that kind of thing. It's not sexy. Now, there are certain moments that invoke a sexiness, and they're all just kind of like random small things. I think a lot of it is post Heathcliff leaving, when Elordi comes back. That's where he looks his best. I think there's like none of the actual sex stuff is like sexy to me, but there's choices that are made that I think are really sexy in some ways. I don't know. It's such a messy movie in that aspect. It's missing key characters. It's missing the key text of what the book is. And what it's trying to do is like make you think, or like go online and be like, oh my goodness, I just watched a really spicy movie. I didn't know they were allowed to show this in theaters. Margot Robbie's touching herself. Ooh, how risque. This isn't risque. This is risque to somebody who's never seen like a dick before. Not that there's any dick in this. There's no dick in this movie, so don't get too excited. There's no nudity in this movie. So how deep are you really going into stuff? Let's talk about the casting. Because fuck, there's some bad choices in this movie. Starting with the leads. Margot Robbie is not the right choice for Catherine. She is too old, she is too blonde, and she is playing this too much like it is a modern character. She does not have old-timey face, which I know is not a big deal. I can get past that. She's wrong. She is wrong for this performance. She's playing it so candidly, and there's no like sense of development to her character. There's no sense of want or desire. She's almost effectively the villain of this piece, which is a weird take to have, which I think is still like the Fennel thing of just like the shock value, where it's like, look at what we can make Margot Robbie do. Catherine's gone bad, baby. Like, no, you perform that poorly, so it's not like shocking in that capacity. I don't know. She's too old for the first part, like just too old. They make the weird choice of making the Nellie character similar of age to her, so like the Hong Chau and Margot Robbie characters are like of the same age category, when that's never really been the case for Nellie. I don't know why that was decided. It doesn't really add anything. We have these big sets, but there's like no other supporting cast in this. There's like maybe 10 people on screen, none of them all at the same time. There's at most like 4 people on screen at once. Feels very small. So you have Jacob Elordi as Heathcliff, and I like Jacob Elordi. He's like the hunk of the moment, in my opinion, like one of these guys who should not be Heathcliff because of what he does. This is like getting Brad Pitt in his prime to be like, go be Heathcliff. Like, no, you don't get Brad Pitt to be Heathcliff. You get Ray Fiennes to do it. You have to get an unknown guy, so there's like a sense of shock that this is somebody you desire. When you have a guy like Jacob Elordi, it doesn't work because we're already too familiar with him. When it comes to like the more like going bad, quote unquote, for like Heathcliff and Catherine in this movie, the stuff with Elordi is more believable because we know he can go to those darker places. But it's not effective by any means, and I don't really like his performance. Feels very much like a handsome guy doing a commercial version of this story. I don't know why it looks like a commercial. It just doesn't look like it's a filled-in idea, and it's just very bleak. I will say, the Alison Oliver performance as Isabella, who, if you've seen my previous video, you know Isabella's the only character I have sympathy for. It is very interesting, the choices they make for Isabella in this story. Maybe the best performance, and it is probably the biggest change from what we've seen her before in other adaptations. In particular, there's something towards the end of her time on screen that is supposed to be like a big shock change, and you're just like, whoa, that's a weird choice. I like it. I think it works for this interpretation of like this empty, hollow world where nobody feels like a real person. But because of that too, and because the movie is so desperate to be like, these two characters are in love, it never leaves any room for any of these characters to be perceived by the larger universe as evil. They make bad choices and do bad things, but then the world around them responds in equally bad and horrendous ways, which is what happens with Edgar, which is what happens with Isabella, and what happens with Nellie. Like, all these characters who should be ashamed at the actions that Catherine and Heathcliff are giving them are suddenly just comfortable with like, well, I guess I'm just going to roll with the punches on this one, be this thing for you. And I'm like, why is that the choice? These two characters can have two different interpretations. Heathcliff and Catherine can either be perceived as the victim or the menace. Both of them. And this movie lets them be neither. It just suddenly makes this story about two people of terrible chemistry who are horny for each other and hook up at random moments throughout the piece, think that they are important enough that their love should matter. It is antithetical to what this story is about for those two characters. And it is so poorly handled in that aspect. But if you want shock value in this world, it gets that right. Emerald Fennell's getting away with it. Ooh. But she's not. It's not her worst movie somehow. But she hasn't made a great one. But I think she's become a name that people recognize for, like, interesting choices being made. And that is something you need as well in cinema. Like, I am always going to see an Emerald Fennell movie because what she's doing is crazy. And I kind of respect it in like a weird way, but I don't like it. This is a bad adaptation. It's just straight up a bad movie. It is poorly written. It is poorly paced. It is just lazy and stupid in some bad ways. But on the occasional moment where we go over the top, where it almost feels like an Armando Iannucci piece of just parodying what this should be, it is kind of funny. Like, there's a scene where they paint the walls of the room that Catherine is staying in to look like her cheeks, and it looks like she's inside a big vagina. And I'm just like, is that a joke? Or is that supposed to be like a sexy thing that this man's so obsessed with this woman that he just wants to be inside her all the time? I don't know what that means. It doesn't work. It is so childish. And maybe that's my biggest problem with Fennell as a filmmaker. All of her films are childish at nature. Like, this isn't a mature person's take on this romance. It is like somebody who read this book in high school and was addicted to Tumblr, being like, isn't it fucking awesome when like you can just get like eaten out in the back of your carriage because, you know, society doesn't know what's going on behind closed doors. Yeah, great. Okay, I'm keep in mind, I don't like any adaptation perfectly, nor do I like any Fennell movie perfectly. So, Wuthering Heights, and thank God I don't have to come back to this world for a while. I am going to give a 5 out of 10. Now, thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.